Last but not least, an example of applications with a large number of applicants and DUs covered. My pleasure to introduce Martina Vosteen from Ramboll.
Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. Yeah, we have had quite some important information about different kinds of application from Richard, from Ying, and also from Hiram. And I will talk now about the upstream supply chain applications, and I will not go so much into the detail as the former speakers, because I was asked to give a little more insight in the general settings. Before I start, just a couple of words on the company I'm working in. That's Ramboll. It's headquartered in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and has about 13,000 employees. It's mainly a technical consulting company. And actually, I was working before with a company called Environ, which was an US-based company. And it was acquired by Ramboll in 2015. Now we are building here the Environment and Health Department within the Ramboll organization. Actually, there was another kind of merger, because that's why I want to explain it here, that you get the whole picture. In 2016, the company Bipro also joined the Ramboll group. And I mentioned this here because we have been working together with Bipro since 2012 on quite a large number of huge authorization applications. And therefore, that you kind of understand why it's called Ramboll Environ, and also Bipro part of Ramboll Environ is pretty complex. But it's, I think, marketing topics from large companies. In total, we completed 48 applications from today on for different types of substances and also different types of industry sectors, chemical sector, pharmaceutical sector, food industry, automotive, aerospace industry, different areas, let's say. And also we have kind of run through all different types of applications, single applicant, joint applicant, upstream supply chain applications. So, and that's where I want to kind of agree with Therese's comment this morning. The upstream supply chain applications, where a large number of downstream users are covered, and I'm talking about here several hundred of downstream users, or even thousands of downstream users, are the most complicated ones, not only for the applicants and the consultants, but also for the committees to evaluate them, and also finally also for the Commission, I think, to provide the final decision. Why are they still needed? Actually, it's often because the end user cannot cover the upstream supply chain. And we face this especially, for example, for CTEC and also some other aerospace applications, because the companies, the large OEMs, which finally need the chrome-plated parts, in that case, they cannot apply for an application because they themselves do not use the chromium-6 substances, but they want to secure the supply chain, so they need to kind of build a consortium, a construction where they can have kind of influence, where they can drive these authorization, because often the suppliers which are using the chromium-6 substance in that case are SMEs, so they would not have the capacity, not the capability to run through such a complex process on their own. It has also some kind of advantages. It reduces the workload on the downstream user levels. It reduces also the workload at ECHA and the committees, because if, for example, for the CTEC application for chromium trioxide, if all 2,000 of companies would have filed their own single application, that would probably be a nightmare for everybody. And the same would have been the case for trichloroethylene, where we would have had a couple of hundred applications. It reduces the cost. That's certainly kind of always to see it in the balance. We have heard also that single applications have the possibility maybe to get longer review period because they're more specific. That's totally clear. But I think that such a large upstream application provides kind of a basis for all the small companies who would not be able to go down the road on their own. I would like to distinguish between two types of upstream applications here. The left one, the type A, I call it the two-level applications, where we have contractual link between the manufacturer of the substance and the downstream users, which are the customer. And I choose here the Dow or SafeChem case for trichloroethylene. and the example on the right-hand side, the type B, which I will call a multi-level application where there's no contractual link between the manufacturer or the importer in that case and the final downstream user. So there are not even only one level in between, like a formulator. There's often also a distributor there. So that's a additional complexity here. And that I would choose the CTEC case example. So if you look at the original setup for the two-level case, there's no consortium needed because the manufacturer of the substance knows quite well its own customers. There's a contractual relationship been established, so the context can be used directly to kind of raise the awareness also at the downstream user side, also to ask for data and also to get them kind of involved into the application process. It might be needed that there's a third party to manage confidential business information. For the multi-level application, it's needed to kind of set up a consortium in the most cases because you have so many different levels of companies which need to be involved. It's the users of the substance themselves, the OEMs, which really need to drive this forward because they have to secure their supply chain. The formulators have to be in there. The importer of the substance needs to be in there. So it's quite a complex construction, and therefore consortium is kind of the best option to run this through. In that case, it is very important from our experience that you kind of motivate the downstream users, which are far away from the applicant, let's say, often, by using channels like industry associations or other kind of platforms where you can reach them more directly. The scoping is for the two-level application quite clear because normally the manufacturer of the substance knows his customers and also knows about the users of the customer, so that's pretty clear. And it can be easily set, and then we can start right from scratch on to gather information via questionnaires, via interviews, and also to elaborate kind of, we call it representative case studies, because even if you have 500 customers, you will not be able to do every SEA impact assessment for each and every customer, but you can kind of group them together and try to elaborate representative case studies. The scoping is a little bit difficult if it comes to the multi-level application, because there you do not know the scope from the beginning, because the applicant does not know the customers, the kind of the final downstream users. So the first thing would be really to find out the scope, to kind of, and therefore it is very important to file some easy first questionnaires, because if the questionnaires are too complex, then companies are not very wanting to answer these complex questionnaires. Therefore, our recommendation would be kind of file easy questionnaires to set the scope, and then if the scope is clearly set, then go into the next round with some more detailed questionnaires to get more detailed information about the use, possible alternatives, etc. What is also helping in that area, if the OEMs, which have kind of a direct contractual relationship to their suppliers, if they can be used as a distributor for the questionnaires, they have often better chances to get answers than if a company which is not known at all to the downstream users file the questionnaires. What we also recognize, what is very helpful, is to file an early draft within the consortium or even outside the consortium to companies who want to comment, because it's always easier for companies kind of to criticize what is written there or to identify that they're not within the scope, then ask them proactively to provide information. But this means that you have longer iterative process here, because you will have more draft versions than maybe for just a two-level application, type number A. If then the documents are kind of elaborated and filed already to the authorities or ready to file, then there's a question if other companies can kind of pick up these documents and change them, adapt them, For the multi-level, for the two-level application, there is no need for such a letter of access, because there is one company kind of manufacturing the substances and selling it or supplying it to the supply chain, and all the downstream users are direct customers, so they can just be covered by the application, and for example, the additional cost or something like that can be arranged in the contracts. That's different if we talk about the multi-level application. All companies which are in the consortium do not need such a letter of access, because they have been already working on the documents with all the other companies together. But there might be an interest of companies who figure out that they are out of scope, but they would use the base set of the documents and then adapt it. It is also possible that they only use maybe an AUA and they do their own CSR or they do their own CEA. So therefore, they should have the chance to get a letter of access and to buy in the data if they want to. There might also be cases that there are companies which have not been involved in the consortium from the beginning because they weren't aware of the process and they wanted to kind of file their single application later on, and just also take the documents as a basis and then adapt it themselves. I think also, as for the registration, LOAs should always be available to all companies outside of the consortium, and the pricing should be fair and transparent. I've also asked to talk a little bit about timelines. We're talking here about upstream supply chain applications, so they take some time. You can do a single, easy applicant approach in a couple of months. If you don't do a pre-submission information session, because for the pre-submission information session, ECHA needs to be informed in front of, and also you need to have some time afterwards to kind of adapt your application if you want to. So from our experience, we would say if it's a two-level upstream application, you should calculate with a year to run through the process, because the interest parties are already known. You have the contacts, there's no consortium needed, and you can directly start with the data. If you look at the multi-level application, it takes, from my perspective, quite double of the time, because at the beginning you have to identify interested parties. You have to have a kind of a key group who starts to form the consortium. Then the consortium agreement needs to be elaborated, which can be quite painful, I would say, because lawyers have to be involved. There are often large OEMs involved. Everybody has his own legal department. So this takes a couple of months already. And then you have to build the awareness within the industry sectors that other companies should join the consortium. So therefore, this whole process takes quite some time. So I would calculate about 2 years from starting 0 to 100, let's say, until you have really elaborated dossiers together. We also heard about conditions for a large number of authorizations that have been granted. The Commission or also the committees have proposed some conditions that need to be met by the applicant. That for the two-level application is, let's say, I think quite easy to implement these conditions within the supply chain, because they can just become part of the supply contracts, for example. The manufacturer can ask his customers to sign specific statements or paragraphs, either or to provide the respective monitoring data, and if the customers don't do so, they could even not supply them anymore. So they have quite some power. That's not the case if you talk about the multi-level application, because we have different levels through which the communication have to run through. There's no direct contractor link between the manufacturer, importer, and the final user of the substance. So the only way how this can be kind of run through the supply chain is the so-called extended safety data sheet. But then the question is, how should the measurements or monitoring data that is kind of gathered in these at the downstream user level, how should this be reported to the applicant? Because there's another condition, for example, that the applicant should use this data, the monitoring data from the downstream users in the review report. And I think there's currently some discussion ongoing how this can be best organized. And as we see at the moment, it's difficult for the applicant to control this process. Thank you very much. I hope I kept the time and we still have some time for questions.